Hello, friends, neighbors. John, your neighbor here. Welcome down to the Nook. And today I am going to tackle a question that will come up every few months. Is it possible to get a Scotch that is enjoyable, that you can like it, you can pour it for friends, and it doesn't absolutely break the bank? That question is getting harder to say yes to. But I think there are two contenders here today that just might do it. I've got Sheep Dip. It's a blended malt Scotch. Used to be called a vatted malt. That means it's all single malts. There's no grain whiskey in here. And then I will turn some thoughts, third time on the channel, to Cutty Sark Prohibition, which is a blended Scotch, which means there's some grain going on in there. Are these guys worth it? Should you bring them home? They certainly sit at a good price point, but are they any good? Why don't you pour some if you've got this or a little more value Scotch and sip along. 3, 4. Well, thanks for coming back. I really couldn't tell you how many times people ask me for a recommendation, but it's an affordable recommendation. I'm just kind of getting into Scotch, but what would be good, but could be a really good price. And that is so hard to give up. There's a few favorites I have, absolutely, that still play in the $50 to $8 Canadian range. Those come up really quick. Craigellachie is one of them, those kinds of things. Some Dean Stins. Can still get Aaron in a decent price, Aaron 10. Those obviously are great, but these are truly value Scotches. We'll start by looking at this Sheep Dip. I have not had it until I came across this bottle on sale for 36 bucks Canadian. I hate saying numbers, but the point is this clearly is affordable. And it's all malted Scotches. This Sheep Dip, I believe originally, I don't know if he's still putting it together, was put together by Richard Patterson. So that guy has crazy cred from the Dalmore, master blender. And it is a makeup, as I understand it, you go to their website, of 16 different, the website said 16 different malts, but right here on the bottle, I was just checking, it says 12 different single malts, so it could be a different blend. But they're starting to put some good stuff on here. They talk about that, we've got it for sure in oak for 5 years. It's a young year, but it's on there. 5 years. They're saying 12, over 12 single malts. And now I'm not sure, because on the website, when it was talking about 16 malts, it talked about an age range, and 8 to 12, or 8 to 21 even, so 8 was the youngest, but this says 5. So this is a different blend than what was on the website. Well, that makes me doubt everything I know about this. But still, all malts, a bunch of single malts put together. I believe it's Highland and Speyside malts. It has an age temp of 5 years. Sadly, it's only 40%. Just as I get into the whiskey, I'll say I love the, the story on here, the idea. Sheep Dip was to run your sheep through to make sure they would be deloused and kill all the nasty bugs on them. But the idea was farmers were making their own whiskey and didn't want to be taxed. They'd put it in containers and label it SD Sheep Dip, or they somehow put it with the Sheep Dip liquids, and so it wouldn't get taxed. Something like that. So that's pretty cool. How is Sheep Dip blended malt? Used to be vatted malts, only malts, on the nose and then the palate. Let's go in. I find this, there's got to be some sherry. I'm sure it's colored, but it smells like a mix of some orchard fruit, but then some raisin, some berry. There's definitely some sherry cask going on the nose. But it also has, a little bit of toffee, a little bit of butterscotch. So there's some vanilla, some ex-bourbon nosing going around, some fruiting going in there. It's pretty soft and approachable. It's not really spicy. There's not a lot of oak in the conversation. But it's also pretty approachable. Let's try it on the palate. Sláinte. First sips are really a welcome mix of malt sugars, sweetness. I'm going to stay with raisins, some plump sweet raisins that are a little bit dried and chewy. Yeah, that's more the fruit. The melon and orchard is kind of in the nose. It's kind of gone away. There's a little bit of spice in the early finish. Let's try another sip together. Sláinte. The spicing is not well integrated into the malt itself. The malt is actually really got a lot of nice relaxed fruit flavors and some sugars, some nice, just, natural fruit sweetness, that kind of thing. It's coming off fruitier than I remember. The toffee vanilla that's in the nose is just on the edges, like in that sweetness part. But the youthful, slightly bitter spiciness doesn't seem to permeate the malt that I'd like it to. That said, that's just the only part that's a little bit critical for me. For the pricing that I was able to get it for, approachability, and good for them for putting an age stamp and the number of malts. I think they're trying to get a little more transparent about it. This sheep dip's pretty tasty. I have no problem thinking, oh, I'm just going to pour relaxed dram. I don't want to think too much about it. Just hang out on the deck and talk a little bit with the wife. And this would fit the bill because it's not killing my bank account. I don't have to carefully nurture every sip. I can just go, this is good. Fruity, slightly floral, sweet malt. It comes off as it is. It's all malt. Just because it's from 12 or 16 different distilleries, it's still malted barley, and it's got that malty and slight chewiness. Even now, the more I talk, way long finish, there's a bit of nuttiness that's come through. I actually like sheep dip. I don't know why I haven't tried it earlier. It's tough to give it this is a critically amazing whiskey, but it's a good one, and it's a great value because of the price and flavor. To be a good value whiskey, you have to enjoy drinking it. And I do. Critically, it probably only sits at about 3.5. It's not going to, I think, win any critical acclaim, but I'm enjoying it. So that's my thoughts on sheep dip. Okay, I'm going to have to come back with some research if I can find it. Because, coming in, I did typical, walk the internet, research, and everyone celebrates how Richard Patterson got this together with 16 malts. But it's changed hands quite a few times. And, it's under the Ian MacLeod Distillers Group. And here it says 12, not 16. It's got 5 and not the minimum 8. And, the master blender on here, this is the research I'm going to have to do. Could be Jaden or Jordan Dater. I don't actually recognize this master blender, and I'm sorry. So I need to try to find that person because all the sites still want to give credit to of Dalmore fame. And I should have mentioned, there is some first fill sherry and some first fill bourbon casking in here, which is part of that brightly, some really good flavors. So even though I kind of gave it a pretty mediocre mark, I'm pretty excited it's on the shelf. So if you're a longtime viewer of the channel, you know that I have struggled really enjoying Cutty Sark Prohibition, even though to a person, my peers in the whiskey community that get on here on YouTube and share their thoughts, love this bottle. It's often up for, value blend of the year or any of those kind of awards because it's a killer. And I recognize that, but I have struggled to embrace the goodness of Cutty Sark Prohibition. But I am certainly willing to always retry. So when I saw this for $31 or $32, I brought it home. This whiskey is a blend. We've got grain and malt whiskeys in here. I think it's I don't know if it's owned by, but Invergordon, like the really large grain distiller, is definitely the grain in here. And then I've heard there's a mix of Glenrothes, Highland Park, maybe Macallan, and Bunnahabhain in here. And all of those are phenomenal single malts. So, I see the cred here, and it's coming out at 50%, and it certainly is budget friendly. So let's see what I'm getting today on Cutty Sark Prohibition Nose and Taste. So right away on the nose, especially coming from the sheep dip here, I'm getting sweeter fruits, melons, orchards, apples, a little bit of citrus, so there's a souring. Yeah, and even more of that. Like I've recently been making a few cocktails where I'm putting in some fresh lemon and I'm getting that kind of that fresh. It's not like super citrusy, but that little bit of tartness that kind of pulls your face together as you nose it, and then I would say orchard and melon fruits. Yeah, pretty much. Let's try it on the palate. Sláinte. So up front, I can get a lot more of that sweetness, honey, um, bright, lively grains, very much. And then, right, like if I keep it around in my mouth, or now we're playing in that early finish, I definitely get toffee, cracked pepper, black pepper, and other kind of a spicing hug or hold. Let's try another sip. Good job. Now I'm back into that lemon custard, bit of a souring in the graininess. There is some graininess for me. Lots of cracked pepper. Some in the early, the toffee kind of vanilla got a little lost for me. Struggling to find it on the edges. It's perky across the tongue. The whole palate is peppery. Good hug coming in because it's 50%. I've come to enjoy Cutty Sark for what it is. It still doesn't continue like just win my heart over like it's done so many people out there, but it's a good whiskey, and there are different layers of that custard fruit, but dried fruit. I got to get more at the fruits. Doesn't have for me the sherry cask. If there's sherry cask in there, because some of those are big sherry houses like Macallan and whatnot, they're just not speaking to me. It speaks very ex-bourbon, light toffee, nice sugars, good sweetness, lots of peppering across the palate, cracked pepper, and then hug. It's probably critically for me really similar. This on a good day could go up to 3.25 at 3.25, and this probably sits at 3.75. So this is probably a better whiskey. Maybe it's a totally different whiskey for me. And the grain notes for me are solidly there. And I like good grain whiskeys if they've got a little age on them. I'm not a super fan of young grain whiskeys. And this maybe is playing a little bit in the young grain. I'm not sure what that is. But the question that I put for us here is, are these tasty, good whiskeys? Yes, they're affordable, but does that mean you should bring them home? And I would actually say I put both of these up here because I think they are. I think these are great value whiskeys. If you're looking for a little more sweeter Speyside, more sherry influence, and more approachability, sitting at 40%, great on the wallet, this all malt sheep dip is something you should bring home. Cutty Sark Prohibition is something you should bring home if you're a little farther in your whiskey journey. I think it might toss you around a little bit, and I do like that in a whiskey. So I'm enjoying it, but I'm a bit hot cold on it. I still recommend it though because I think it's got lots of flavors to offer, and if you're a little further in your whiskey journey, I wouldn't run to it if you're really just starting out in Scotch. I wouldn't. Yeah, I'd be tempted because of the big ABV and the good pricing, but I think I don't know, it's certainly taken me some time to appreciate it. I do now, and certainly recommend it if you're a little further into your Scotch journey. Both of these are good values. Both of them should be tried at some point. Thanks for joining me here. And if you would, comments on these would be great. And also just throw down some comments. What are some other, what you define as value whiskeys? Things that, yeah, they're easy on the pocketbook, but I would also say are definitely enjoyable. Thanks for watching. You guys have a good week.